Young and the Restless fans. Jack may have survived Patty's latest shocker, but honestly the real drama might be just getting started. Kyle is already talking about going after Victor, and you know that is not the kind of idea that ends with everyone happily drinking wine at the Abbott mansion. So, if today was supposed to be relief, why does it already feel like the setup for the next disaster? It's Rodica from Rodica, and we're going to talk about the young and the restless. But first, please hit subscribe if you're not already following us. So, today on The Young and the Restless, we got one of those episodes that looks warm and emotional on the surface, and then the more you sit with it, the more you realize there are landmines absolutely everywhere. And I mean everywhere. You had family bonding, tears, romance, trauma, revenge talk, father figure angst, and of course Victor Newman's name hanging over everything like the world's most expensive storm cloud. It was a lot, and honestly I liked that because soap is always at its best when somebody is hugging in one room while somebody else is quietly planning a terrible decision in another. So let's start at society because that is where Billy and Kyle had what was actually a surprisingly vulnerable conversation. And I have to say, I did not expect that scene to hit the way it did. Billy is trying to talk Kyle down, or maybe not even fully talk him down, but at least steady him a little bit. He's basically telling Kyle that the worst is behind them now, which, let's be honest, is exactly the kind of thing characters say 5 minutes before the next crisis starts. But still, Billy is trying. He is trying to give Kyle something solid to stand on after all the chaos. And Kyle, for his part, is not buying peace quite so easily. He's looking around at everything that almost happened with Jack, and he is clearly rattled by the idea of a future without him. That part really landed for me because Kyle saying in so many words that Jack is everybody's safety net is so true. Jack is that emotional center for this family. He's the one people orbit around. He is the steady hand, the familiar voice, the guy everybody assumes will be there to fix it, or at least absorb the first emotional blow. And when you suddenly picture the Abbott family without that figure, yeah, it is unsettling. It makes sense that Kyle would spiral a little bit over that. And then Billy says he sees Jack and Kyle, which is one of those lines that can either feel forced or really genuine, and here it actually worked. It felt earned. Kyle had saved Diane earlier, and Billy is pointing out that Kyle stepped up. He showed up when it mattered. He protected family. And both of them get choked up, which, honestly, I loved. Not because I enjoy seeing people miserable, although this is soap and we all have a twisted little streak somewhere, but because it gave their relationship some depth. It was not just plot delivery. It was two men who have both been shaped by Jack in very different ways, suddenly realizing they have more in common than they thought. Now, the really good part of that conversation, at least for me, was when Billy admitted he had felt displaced by Kyle. That is such a messy, human thing to admit.
And it tracks.
Billy lost John Young. Jack stepped into that father figure role, and then Kyle came along as Jack's actual son. Of course there were feelings there. Of course there was insecurity. Of course there was that quiet, ugly little pain of wondering whether your place in somebody's life is permanent or temporary. Soap doesn't always slow down long enough to let characters say that out loud, and I thought this episode did a really nice job with it. And Billy takes it even further because he points out that he and Kyle have made a lot of the same mistakes, especially when it comes to revenge. Now, when Billy Abbott starts giving revenge cautionary speeches, that is when you know a man has lived. He has the resume. He has the scars. He has the long, embarrassing archive of bad decisions. So when he tells Kyle that going after Victor means hurting people Kyle cares about too, that is not some generic warning. That is hard-won wisdom. That is Billy saying, I know how seductive this feels, and I also know how badly it can wreck your life. And Kyle admits he does not even have a full plan yet, which, honestly, is the most Kyle part of all this. He is furious, emotionally charged, wounded, and ready to declare war before he has mapped out the battlefield. Very on brand. But then he asks Billy to work with him and give him the benefit of his experience, and that is where the scene takes its turn from emotional to ominous. Because now this is not just Kyle being upset. This is Kyle actively trying to recruit Billy into an anti-Victor operation, and if those words don't scream trouble, I don't know what does. So, over at the hospital, Jack wakes up with Diane by his side, and these scenes were the emotional heart of the episode. Diane tells him there is nowhere she would rather be, and whether you love Diane, hate Diane, side-eye Diane, or have spent years waiting to see if this redemption is real, you cannot deny that the show is leaning hard into the strength of this relationship right now. Patty tried to destroy them, and instead of breaking them apart, it seems to have cemented them. Diane basically says as much. She tells Jack that Patty only proved how strong their love is, and Jack is right there with her, promising that Patty will never come between them again. And yes, they flirt. Of course they flirt. This man has barely opened his eyes, and we are already doing soft romance in a hospital room. Honestly, I mean, it is a soap, and if people are not making vows while attached to medical equipment, what are we even doing here? But I liked the tone of those scenes because they were not only romantic. There was relief there. There was gratitude. There was that very specific post-crisis intensity where people suddenly talk like every moment matters more than it did yesterday. Diane is looking ahead to the future. Jack wants to make up for lost time. It is sweet, but it also has that soap edge where sweetness sometimes shows up right before the next hammer drops. Then Diane decides it is finally time to go home and rest, which, yes, good, somebody please rest in this town for once. But the moment she exits, Abby comes in to see Jack, and this is where the episode quietly shifts into another emotional lane. Jack immediately focuses on what matters most to him, which is that Diane is okay and that they can all move on. That tells you exactly where his head is. He is not sitting there dwelling on Patty or replaying the attack for Abby. He is choosing Diane, choosing the future, choosing recovery. At least consciously. Subconsciously, we will get to in a second. And because Jack is Jack, he notices Abby has something on her mind.
He can read people like that.
Abby reluctantly confesses that she and Devin are going through a rough patch, and that scene was short, but it mattered. Jack reassures her that they will work it out. He gives her uncle comfort, steady and kind, and Abby thanks him, but then she leaves in tears. So clearly this is not some tiny spat she just wanted to vent about. There is pain there. There is fear there. She is carrying more than she wants to say. And even though the episode does not unpack that thread fully yet, it plants it very clearly. Now, right after Abby leaves, Jack falls asleep, and this is where the show reminds us that recovery is not the same thing as being fine. He dreams of Patty attacking him. He grunts in his sleep. And then, in a very moving turn, he dreams of John's pride when Jack got Chabot back for him. That was such a classic YNR emotional beat. The father legacy, the family business, the old wounds, and old love all blending together. Jack is not just dealing with physical aftermath here. He is emotionally raw. He is replaying trauma and anchoring himself in his father's memory at the same time. So even when the episode gives him warmth, it also gives him cracks. Meanwhile, back at the Abbott mansion, we get a very different kind of scene, and honestly, these were some of my favorite moments in the whole episode. Tracy, Ashley, and Lauren are sharing a drink and talking through the nightmare the family has just endured. And the energy there is exactly what I want from Abbott family scenes. It is reflective, affectionate, a little weary, a little funny, and full of history. They get nostalgic.
They talk about John.
They remember how important he was to all of them before Jack took his place as the family's emotional center. And that is such a key point because it reinforces the theme running through the whole episode. This family survives by closing ranks around its anchors. And of course, because this is still a soap and not a memorial service, the scene also gets delightfully weird in that domestic Abbott way. They joke about sprinkling salt to get rid of Patty's evil vibes. I mean, honestly, if Patty has been anywhere near my house, I am tossing salt, sage, holy water, whatever is in reach. I'm not taking chances.
So, I kind of loved that line.
It let the show acknowledge how diabolical Patty's presence felt without making the whole thing grim. It was just the right amount of dry humor. Then they head into the dining room for wine and food, and the Abbott sisters tell Lauren that she is an honorary member of the family. And I have to say, that was lovely. It was one of those quiet little gestures that tells you everything about who the Abbotts are at their best. They make room. They gather people in. They turn shared trauma into shared belonging. And Lauren being thrilled by that totally worked because she has history with them, and because after the kind of chaos they all just lived through, hearing "you're one of us" probably lands even harder. And then Diane shows up. Her emotions are all over the place, which, yes, understandable. She is exhausted, relieved, overwhelmed, and probably still running on adrenaline and disbelief. But what she says is simple. She is happy to be back with Jack and free. And this is where the scene turns into something bigger than just post-crisis decompression. Tracy and Ashley tell Diane she is home. Abby arrives and echoes that feeling. Diane realizes, maybe fully for the first time, that she is being accepted as an Abbott, and she bursts into tears while Tracy holds her. Now, whether you have been waiting years for Diane to get this kind of acceptance, or whether you are still squinting at her like, okay, but let's not get carried away, the emotional intent of that scene was crystal clear. This was the family officially wrapping her into the fold. Not tolerating her. Not strategically coexisting with her. Accepting her. That is huge. That is not a small social nicety. That is a power shift, an emotional shift, and honestly a big statement about where the show wants Diane positioned now. And while all that is happening, Kyle is still over at Society trying to pry battle strategies out of Billy. He wants Billy's hard-won wisdom about taking on Victor, which again, if we are talking resumes, Billy definitely has won. And Billy says something very important here. He admits that months ago, he would have sat there workshopping anti-Victor ideas all day long. Months ago, he would have been right in the middle of the mess, maybe even leading it. But now he is expecting a child, and he has to stay out of this.
He draws the line.
He says no. And I believe Billy means that in the moment. I really do. He sounds sincere. He sounds like a man trying to make a better decision than he would have made in the past. But the problem is, soap promises and soap boundaries are made of tissue paper. Kyle is determined. Absolutely determined. He says, there is no room for failure, and that line tells you everything about where his head is. This is not casual frustration. This is obsession knocking at the door. He is not talking like a guy who wants justice in a measured, healthy way. He is talking like a guy who has decided a war is necessary and failure is unacceptable. That is how people end up unglued, and Billy knows it because Billy has been there. So, back at the Abbott manse, the family starts planning for Jack's return, which is sweet and cozy, and exactly the kind of scene that makes you think, oh no, something is going to ruin this. Because soaps love a happy family tableau right before some loose end comes flying back in. Abby takes a group selfie to send to Jack, and that was a cute little modern touch in an otherwise very old-school emotional episode. It was warm. It was intimate. It said, we are here. We are together. Come back to us. And over in his hospital bed, Jack looks at that picture and gets emotional.
He misses his father. He misses that strength. He is thinking about John.
He is thinking about legacy. He is looking at the women in his family gathered together waiting for him, and he chokes up. It is a beautiful ending beat, honestly. But again, this show did not make it feel purely safe. Because we have already seen Jack dreaming of Patty's attack. We have already seen Kyle gearing up for Victor. We have already seen Abby cracking around the edges. So even in the tenderness, there is tension. And that is why I think this episode was sneakier than it looked. On paper, it is a healing episode. It is a relief episode. It is an everybody loves each other episode. But under that, it is also planting the next set of emotional explosions. Kyle is unstable in a way he does not even realize yet. Billy is trying to be wiser than his instincts. Jack is not as recovered as he wants everyone to think. Diane is finally being embraced, which means the stakes for losing that acceptance are now much higher. And Abby is absolutely not okay, no matter how quickly that scene moved by. So yes, there was wine and hugs and family bonding, and I enjoyed every second of it, but I also think the episode was quietly telling us that the real fallout is only beginning. So, first up, I think the biggest immediate theory here has to be that Kyle's need to go after Victor is going to become the next major disaster, and I do mean disaster. I suspect this is the story engine that is about to pull multiple people into its orbit whether they want in or not. Kyle is coming out of a traumatic family crisis. He is emotional. He is protective. He is thinking about Jack's mortality. And he is looking for somewhere to put all that fear and anger. Victor is the obvious target because Victor is always the obvious target when somebody wants to punch back at power in this town. The problem is, going after Victor Newman is not like angrily unsubscribing from a newsletter. It is not a symbolic move. It is war. And Billy, of all people, knows that, and what makes Kyle especially dangerous right now is not just that he wants revenge. Plenty of characters want revenge. It is that he is framing failure as impossible. That is obsession language. That is tunnel vision language. That is exactly how people convince themselves that every reckless move is justified because the cause is just so important. And Kyle has always had that streak where his hurt can dress itself up as moral clarity. He thinks he is being strong. He thinks he is being decisive. But honestly, I think there is a good chance he is about to repeat the very pattern Billy warned him about. Because let's talk about what Billy actually said. He did not just say Victor is powerful. He said targeting Victor means hurting people Kyle cares about too. That line matters. That means collateral damage. That means business fallout, personal fallout, emotional fallout. Kyle might tell himself he is doing this for family, but my guess is that if he keeps moving down this road, he will end up putting family in the line of fire. You would think today's brush with losing Jack would make everybody cling a little tighter to peace, but in Soap Land it often does the opposite. It makes people more impulsive. It makes them think they cannot wait anymore. Life is short, so let's blow everything up by Friday. Very rational, very calm. And I could see Kyle convincing himself that he is different from Billy, that he can be more strategic, less chaotic, less self-destructive. That is exactly what every character says right before history repeats itself in a slightly more expensive outfit. He might believe he can keep emotions out of it. He might believe he can take Victor on cleanly and cleverly. But Victor is not some loose end sitting around waiting to be tied up. Victor is the machine. He has resources, patience, instincts, reach. He does not even have to crush you all at once. He can just squeeze little by little until your plan collapses and your relationships start burning.